So Chris Cillizza is a CNN host. He's utterly useless. I honestly don't know how he got that job. My guess is some kind of nepotism. He has no natural audience. He's the definition of force-fed. So he's shoved down the throats of Americans who happen to watch CNN every now and then. He's an abysmal failure in every sense of the word. Deep down, he knows he's that. And everything about him annoys me. He does this, like, affable, like, boy next door type of shtick while making horrendously stupid points. And it's just unbearable. So he decided to do some commentary on Bernie Sanders' 2020 candidacy. And, I mean, you make your own mind up, but I think this speaks for itself. Take a look.
Do I have a Bernie Sanders impersonation? No. Well, millionaires and billionaires. Huh? He's running again.
I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president.
The he there is, of course, Bernie Sanders, who went from who to who la la in the course of his 2016 challenge to Hillary Clinton for the Democratic presidential nomination. Now, Sanders is back for a second try at that brass ring, and his calculation is relatively simple. No one thought I had any chance of winning in 2016, and I darn near beat the most powerful non-incumbent frontrunner in the history of modern American politics. Well, true. Now people know me and like me, and I'm running from the front of the pack. So this all should be much easier. Sanders is right about part of that. People do know him, and Democrats at least like him a lot. A Monmouth University poll released in early February showed almost 7 in 10 Democrats had a favorable opinion of Sanders, while just 19% had an unfavorable opinion. And Sanders trailed only former Vice President Joe Biden in the 2020 ballot test in that same poll. Sidebar and weird, another person who seems to like Sanders is Donald Trump.
But I like Bernie because he is one person that, on trade, he sort of would agree on trade. What happened to Bernie Sanders 4 years ago was quite sad as it pertains to our country. So we'll see how he does.
Trump repeatedly praised Sanders during the 2016 race and said he was a victim of an establishment conspiracy aimed at electing Clinton.
Because they didn't treat Bernie right. They didn't treat him right. I mean, I don't know Bernie. I don't know him. I never met him. But they didn't treat him right.
Now back to Democrats. They aren't just saying they like and support Sanders, they're actually digging into their wallets to show that support. In his first 24 hours as a candidate, Sanders raised nearly $6 million from more than 200,000 individual donors, which is remarkable. Remember though, how I said Sanders was right about only part of his analysis, that he could simply recreate his 2016 campaign in 2020, but this time wind up, in first place. Here's several things that make 2020 a different race for the Bern. The most obvious difference is that the 2020 field is already big and is going to keep getting bigger. Whereas the 2016 race only really had Sanders and Clinton in it, sorry Martin O'Malley, the 2020 slate of Democrats could number, and I'm not kidding here, in the dozens, cheaper by the dozens. Ugh. The problem for Sanders is not that there are so many candidates, really, but that so many of the candidates are vying for his slot as the liberal champion in the race. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and more are all trying to be the candidate who liberals fall in love with. That, of course, is what Sanders is trying to do too, which means he's going to have a lot more competition for that ideological space in 2020 than he did in 2016. Now then there's the fact that the Democratic Party of 2020 is going to look different than the Democratic Party of 2016. The Democratic Party is getting less white, younger, and more female. Anyone who paid attention to the 2018 election could see that clearly. Women delivered Democrats the House majority, both as candidates and voters. And some of the biggest stars of the 2018 election were younger black candidates like Andrew Gillum in Florida and Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Now, does this younger, more diverse Democratic Party want to nominate a 77-year-old white man as its standard bearer? And last, but certainly not least, is this fact. Bernie Sanders isn't technically speaking a Democrat at all. Yes, he ran as one in 2016, but as he himself admitted, he did that because he didn't think a third-party presidential bid was viable. And I'm quoting Sanders, "The bolder, more radical approach is obviously running outside of the two-party system," he told The Nation magazine way back in 2014. Do people believe at this particular point that there is the capability of starting a third-party movement, or is that an idea that is simply not realistic at this particular moment in history? End quote. In all of Sanders' previous races, for mayor of Burlington, Congress, and for Senate, he ran as an independent. And he has long said he identifies himself as a Democratic socialist. So after Sanders ran for and lost the Democratic nomination for president in 2016, he unaffiliated with the Democratic Party and went back to being an independent. Quote, "I am an independent, and I have always run in Vermont as an independent while I caucus with the Democrats in the United States Senate," Sanders said in 2017. "That's what I've been doing for a long time, and that's what I'll continue to do." And that's what he did. He ran and won easily as an independent in 2018 for the Senate and went right back to caucusing with the Democrats in the Senate when he came back to Washington earlier in 2019. Now, in 2016, the fact that Sanders was a Democrat for convenience never was much of an issue. Clinton ignored Sanders for, honestly, most of the race, and when she did attack him, it was on his voting record on guns and how his support for a single-payer healthcare system could mess up the Affordable Care Act. She didn't talk a lot about his party affiliation. But in 2020, voters will have to ask themselves this question. With lots of people running for the Democratic nomination who have been lifelong Democrats, is it worth voting for a guy who, by his own admission, is taking on the cloak of being a Democrat because he knows he can't win as an independent candidate for president? It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Democratic voters don't care. Maybe they dated Bernie in 2016, but are going to marry him, politically speaking, in 2020. But count me as skeptical. It's hard to find lightning in the same bottle twice, and that is the point.
That video has about a 98% dislike rate. That might not be an exaggeration. It's between 95% dislikes and 98% dislikes. The entire bar on YouTube is like just a fucking cadre of wall-to-wall dislikes. And then you read the comments, and every single comment is like, "You're an idiot." Which, the reaction to this video gave me life, because that's exactly correct. The reaction is exactly correct. Now, one of the comments, and I totally agree with this comment, said, "Hold on now. CNN's parent company was a donor to Hillary Clinton in 2016. They didn't disclose it. Now, CNN's parent company is a donor to Kamala Harris in this election, and they're not disclosing it." So they do all these. The thing that annoys people more than anything, I think, because it annoys me the most, is not that they have a clear political opinion and that's where their arguments are framed from. It's that they're massively disingenuous in the process of doing it. So when you watch this show, I don't play hide the ball. I tell you straight up. In fact, it's in like the bio of my Twitter. It's in the bio of the Secular Talk YouTube channel. It says, you know, this is from a populist left social democratic perspective. And, you know, I tell you guys that because I believe in honesty. Now, I have arguments to back up my positions, and I bring them up all the time, but I'm direct about where I'm coming from. Whereas CNN, they would swear up and down that they're being objective, and they're just telling it like it is, and they're just giving the facts. When what you just saw was a segment that was totally framed from a pro-establishment, pro-centrist corporate Democrat perspective. That's exactly what that was. And again, they would swear up and down that's not the case. So let's go through the arguments. Notice the first smear attempt is when he brings up Trump. Because he says, you know, there's another person who happens to like Bernie Sanders. It's not just that the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters like him. It's Donald Trump likes him. oh, aren't you cutesy and clever with how you're attacking him? And then notice he presents it as if it's like, what do you mean? No, I'm just showing you exactly what he says. Yeah, but what about all the other clips where he calls him Crazy Bernie? And all the other clips where he rails against him and he says that, you know, Bernie wants to make this country like Venezuela, which of course is not true, but where Trump viciously attacks Bernie and smears him and lies about him and gives horrendous arguments to try to fight back against Bernie. You left those out because you wanted to make the point, oh, Trump likes Bernie. Actually, my reading of everything Trump said recently on Bernie is very simply that he's scared of him. Because he knows that, listen, say what you want about Donald Trump. He knows how to sense a room and play off the room. That's what he was so good at with his rallies. So he can see the grassroots support for Bernie out there, and so he knows it's a smarter thing for him not try to, in every circumstance, like go over the top and attack. He knows he's got to, you know, cushion the landing and say, me? I mean, listen, I kind of like the guy. Hey, we agreed on trade, right? So for Cillizza to present that as like, strike one, Bernie, Donald likes you, except most of the stuff Trump says about Bernie is how he doesn't like him. And the few times he mentions that he likes him is because it looks like he's scared. And he understands that Bernie will beat him. I mean, the polls show that Bernie, on average, would have won the popular vote by about 11 percentage points. And before you say, hey, Kyle, the polls show Hillary would have won the popular vote too, and she did. Yeah, but those polls showed that she would win by about 3%, and she did. Again, Bernie's is about 11% on average. So, and that was back in the day. I think it would be even more now. So then he says, oh, and Trump says that there's an establishment conspiracy against Bernie. Hey, listen, I got news for you. If Donald Trump says the sky is blue, that doesn't mean the sky is not blue. In fact, it's been proven that there was a DNC conspiracy against Bernie. We have the records. I mean, they were functionally acting as a campaign arm of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Again, that's not me speaking. That's look at the financials and the agreement they had set up. The Hillary team literally got to control the press releases of the DNC. And we're going to pretend like it was this neutral arbiter? Are you fucking kidding me? But that's what he's doing. He's saying it as if, oh, Trump has this conspiracy that the DNC, the establishment, was against Bernie Sanders. Again, if Trump says the sky is blue, that doesn't mean it is not blue. He's such a bad hack pundit. Like, he's such a hack. It just drips off of everything he says. And then he goes to the next. I've noticed this one floating around a lot more often now. Again, it's utterly made up, but it's funny that they're using it. They say, oh, well, you know, hey, now the problem that Bernie's going to have is there's more choices. There's more choices now. And since there's more choices, he's less likely to stand out. And also, of the more choices, they're all trying to be the most progressive candidate. So that's why Bernie's in trouble. Except the response to that is, yeah, there's more choices, but polls still show he's a leader. And yeah, they're all trying to copy him. And they're failing. Again, not me speaking. It's the evidence speaking. Kamala Harris, CNN was hard over her fundraising numbers. She raised like $1.5 million in a day. Bernie raised $6 million. Kamala Harris had less than 100,000 individual small donors. Bernie had over 200,000. So, any actual objective, quantitative, empirical measure you want to use, all that evidence shows people haven't stopped feeling the burn. If anything, they're feeling the burn more. And even their snide comments, like side comments about how, oh, well, Biden's actually the real front runner. Well, no, because if you look at the methodology and the polls that were used to determine that, they're way oversampling older Democrats. And when you oversample older Democrats, yes, they're more likely to lean in that centrist direction. Whereas if you look at young Democrats, Bernie is their number one by a mile and a half, which gets to the next point. He says, hey, listen, why would they pick an old white male? This is a party that's young people of color. Now, the first response to that is, hold on now, it would be historic if Bernie won because he's Jewish. So why is that not? I mean, I know you guys, they love to self-servingly use identity politics. where if they could use identity politics to back an establishment character, they'll use it all day long. When they can't, all of a sudden, they don't care about identity anymore, and they're like, oh, the first Jewish president? Irrelevant. What? But you guys say you care about identity politics. So why would they pick an old white male? Well, he's Jewish, and that would be an important point to bring up if you're having this conversation about identity. But also, hey, dipshit, it's young people of color who Bernie has his highest favorability numbers among. So this isn't going to work. Like, there's a lot of articles out there that talk about, Bernie supporters, they're all young white males. That's the problem here. But actually, when you go to the numbers, he does worst among whites compared to everybody else. He does better among women. He does better among people of color. He does better among female people of color. So this is not like... These aren't going to work. These shitty points you're making aren't going to work because people now can research shit and fact check shit. And when you say that, that's what they do. And that's why one of the reasons why this video has so many dislikes is that it's the lazy smear talking points which are half-assed and you're not even trying. So for them to say, oh, why would we pick an old white male? Well, maybe because the polls show the Democratic Party, which is young and people of color, that's who they love Bernie the most. It's unbelievable what he's doing. And then finally, he does the, oh, he's not a Democrat shtick. That never landed ever. The only people that lands with are literally like the most hardcore, fervent Hillary Clinton supporter, centrist, brainwashed Democrats. And that's not that big of a slice of the party. Which is why even he said at the beginning, 7 out of 10 Democrats, actually more than that, it's actually about 8 out of 10 Democrats love Bernie Sanders, and he crushes among independents as well. So it turns out this argument of like, oh, he's not a Democrat, that actually helps him. Because look at the polls for Congress, for example. Now, Congress is overwhelmingly Democrats and Republicans, the two major parties. What is there, 1 or 2 independents in there? If that. So Congress has like a 19% approval rating. Sometimes it gets as low as 9%. I don't know if you've seen the polls on the major parties, Chris, but the American people are kind of like, hey, fuck these parties. We know they're corrupt. We know we're always picking from the lesser of two evils. So when Bernie gives these speeches and he rails against the establishment of both parties, as he does, that lands with regular people. That doesn't land with you in your comfy-ass studio in New York City, surrounded by other establishment elitist pricks. You look at that as, oh, the people will not approve of this. Nonsense. The people actually love it. It could be one of the main reasons why he polls so high. So it's just like, again, it's just kind of made up. I think that I could use this against him even though I can't, but I'm going to try. And then who cares? The reason why he decided to run as a Democrat, and I agree with this estimation, is that he thinks it's his best chance of winning. And I think that's true. Look at Ross Perot, who did really well as an independent candidate, got 19% of the vote, and got 0 electoral votes. You're just not going to win running as an independent. So he said, listen, for president, to be clear. So he said, listen, I can't win as an independent for president. If I could, maybe I would have run that way. But I'm going to run with the party that I caucus with, which is the Democrats. And again, that level of I'm removed from this rotten, corrupt system and I want to fix it, that's what people like. People look at that and they go, oh, this guy's, a rebel. This guy's not playing around. This guy will hold both parties accountable. And then, listen, the thing that might be the worst aspect of this is he did this whole segment about Bernie Sanders' launch for president, and the whole point is to say, this is going nowhere. This isn't like 2016. This is dumb. Why is he doing this? That's the whole point. That's the whole underlying message. Notice he didn't at all bring up Medicare for all. He didn't bring up free college. He didn't bring up a living wage. He didn't bring up a Green New Deal. He didn't bring up ending the wars. He didn't bring up legalizing marijuana and ending the drug war. He didn't bring up an infrastructure deal. He brought up no serious policy issues. You're doing a segment on Bernie Sanders' run for president in 2020. That run is totally based on a litany of social democratic policies that he wants to get implemented and that poll overwhelmingly popular. You didn't bring up one of those policies in your video on Bernie Sanders' launch. So you poo-pooed his entire candidacy without bringing up any aspect of what entails his candidacy. And this gets to the heart of why people fucking hate CNN. The right calls them fake news, and a lot of people on the left, including me, call them fake news. You want to know why? Because they're really bad at their job. They're really bad at their job. And if you're willing to talk, you go watch any of my segments where I describe the launch of any of the candidates, whether it be Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Amy Cloudboot-Jar, you name it. I was giving policies in the segments. You want to know why? Because that's the measure of a candidate, is what are they planning on implementing, and what's their record show, and are they actually going to stay true to their word? So that's what serious people do when they're looking at different candidates. Now, I repeat, Chris Cillizza didn't bring up a single specific policy proposal. Not one. Not one. Not one. See, you're an unserious person, Chris. You're a joke of a human being. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. If you're going to do political commentary, do political commentary. It's supposed to be based off policy. It's called politics. It's supposed to be off policy. But the thing is, guys, he's comfortable. He's a comfortable corporatist. He doesn't have to worry about paying his bills. So he's not connecting with regular folks. Like, normal people out there, and this is why Bernie's so popular, are like, fuck, I got to pay my light bill. You know? Or, fuck, we don't have clean water in my town. Fuck, I'm going to go bankrupt because of a medical bill. This is bullshit. Fuck, I lost 2 kids in war when they decided they were going to join the military. This is what's happening with regular people. Chris Cillizza doesn't give a fuck about those people. He doesn't think about them for an instant. How do I know? He just discussed the launch of a presidential candidate and didn't bring up any of the relevant policies that impact people's lives. So, listen, even though this annoys the shit out of us, and we hate it, and we're going after him for it, the reality is, keep it real, shit like this helps Bernie. It does. It helps Bernie. Because people are going to go, holy shit, this is all they got? I'm not kidding about this, guys. I saw an article earlier today on Politico. And you know they're going to do massive hit pieces all day long on Bernie, just like Washington Post. And the article in Politico was, Bernie Sanders, he travels a lot, and therefore he's increasing pollution, and he's increasing global warming, and therefore people are getting tired of his hypocrisy where he talks about this issue like it matters so much, and then he's still traveling a lot. I'm not kidding. That's an actual article. The whole point of an article that was written today. By the way, they were quoting former Clinton strategists in the article, and they were making the points of like, oh, some people say this is hypocritical and unforgivable. I mean, listen, most of the carbon emissions are done, the overwhelming majority are done by like less than 100 corporations. The only way to combat climate change is with regulation and policy to crack down on those corporations. The pull yourself up by your bootstraps individualism argument is utter horseshit when it comes to climate change. But even if it wasn't, that's all you got on this guy? He has to travel. He's fucking running for president. He's been traveling to go protest with working people and unions to try to get them better wages. So he's got to travel. That's all you got on him? That's it? Oh, Bernie travels a lot, so he's canceled. So go ahead, guys. Keep attacking him like this. Keep attacking him like this. Because it ain't going to go anywhere, man. You're going to help him. All you got is, oh my God, his agenda's pie in the sky. No, it's not. Scandinavian countries have it, and he's just asking for the basics. Oh my God, Vuvuzela. He wants us to be Vuvuzela. No, he doesn't. He's repeatedly stated the Scandinavian model's the way to go, and oh yeah, let's ignore the fact that there's also economic warfare going on against Venezuela, but just keep bringing that point up as if it's a good point. Oh my God, he's not a Democrat. So what? People actually like that. Like, every point they make is just so, like, it's a fucking brush aside nonsense. At least make me stop and think about your shitty arguments. Seriously. At least give me something where I go, that's an interesting point. They don't have it. And that's why people hate you, Chris, and that's why they're going to continue to hate you, and that's why you suck at your job. But keep the hits coming because it's only helping.